was Cesar Chavez?
No, Cesar Chavez is? No.
A guy.
A guy?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
I know it's a school. That's all I know.
The school?
Julio Cesar Chavez? Boxer. Famous boxer from Mexico. He was awesome when I was a kid. Kind of got older and stopped boxing, but he was pretty amazing.
I think he was a leader in Cuba.
He was an activist.
He was a farmer, I believe, an agricultural person who led a revolution.
He started a riot to make it equal for the people that worked in the farmlands.
Cesar Chavez became the most important Latino activist in the U.S. history by creating the United Farm Workers and starting a movement to help farm workers earn better wages and also improve their working conditions.
Look, as long as there's exploitation of the farm workers, the union is viable. The union exists because the growers exploit the workers unmercifully. And as long as that happens, the union's going to be around.
You know, when Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta co-founded the UFW half a century ago, it was an incredible act of bravery. They believed that everyone had a right to fair pay for hard work. Today, Cesar is no longer with us, but I think he would be incredibly proud of everything you've done on behalf of the workers he loved so much. Si se puede.
It was somehow shocking that some of these people had been teachers and students from the Cesar Chavez Junior High and high school, and they did not know who he was. They only knew that it was a school. Even other students said that they only knew about the school but not the person. Fortunately, we did find people who did know about him, and our team got very excited when we did get to meet people who did know who he was.
In terms of what I heard him say, not what I read about him say, I'll give you two things you can pick. Can't lose. If we look at history, we can't lose. Because what history tells us is that where people don't give up, where they keep fighting, where they don't let other things get in the way, that we will succeed, we will prevail. But that it won't necessarily come soon or easy. And so when we say, so like, what's the real goal of this boycott? You know, we talk about the goal of this boycott. I'm trying to get in his voice here. Talk about the goal of this boycott being to win a contract, but it's not about winning a contract. The purpose of this boycott is to prepare for the long struggle.
Now let us all teach who Cesar Chavez was and his long-lasting legacy. What makes Cesar Chavez a legacy? He was born near Yuma, Arizona on March 31st, 1927. He was one of the survivors of the Great Depression. Cesar Chavez's parents owned a farm and a grocery store. His father, Librado, and his mother, Juana, did their best to take care of their businesses. But in the time of the Depression, it all went down and they ended up losing everything. This led them to move to California and start working on farms. When he was a young boy, he worked in the fields after his family lost their farm. As he grew up, he saw many injustices committed against immigrants.
Well, I like to tell people that in addition to him being a labor leader, you know, he felt that farm workers can better their lives by joining labor unions and fighting collectively together. But he was also a person that believed in building coalitions. So he built coalitions outside of the largely Latino community that he was working with. He built them with other, of course, other labor organizations, but he built them with, environmentalist groups. He built them with the African American community, because he knew that by working together and asking these people that are outside the Latino community to join our movement, that we could be that much more successful.
The farm owners treated their workers as animals, violating their rights and supported unsafe working conditions.
I think there are better alternatives. There are ways that farmers can farm without pesticides. There are natural ways to control pests, which means that they don't have to use poisons. So if farmers can find better natural alternatives, it can be better for the plants that they grow and their own health, so that they don't get affected by the pesticides.
When he turned 15, he decided that he would help his family and work with them in the fields. He received the same mysteries that the other farm workers did, so he had a great understanding on what these farm workers were going through. If we put ourselves in Chavez's shoes, what would we do? That's the question that is crossing our minds right now. Chavez ameliorated the suffering of many people and instilled the role model of many, especially immigrants and those fighting for workers' rights. The same organization that organized the Great Boycott, which was when people stopped buying grapes because the farm owners were not paying the farm workers the way they were supposed to be, also led the lettuce boycott. Even though these farm workers had refused to join the UFW for months, once they realized that the UFW was really making a difference, then they joined the UFW. The farm workers realized that their minimum wage was not going to get them anywhere in life because they were losing their health in the fields and they were not even able to give their children the education that they all deserve. More than 5,000 of the 7,000 farm workers walked off their jobs and the lettuce production dropped 70% in 3 weeks, causing the price of the lettuce to double in the market within those 3 weeks. Even though California's Salinas Valley never joined them when their minimum wage was $1.25 an hour, Cesar Chavez still assumed responsibility to take these farm workers out of their continuous misery. During the 1920s, farm owners were seeking agricultural workers. 3 groups answered the call. First was the Chinese, then the Japanese, and lastly the Mexicans. The Chinese and the Japanese workers did not last in the fields because of racism since 1910 in California. Mexicans replaced thousands of Asian workers. In the 1920s, there was a problem. There were only 8,000 Mexicans that were living in California during the time. Later on that year, more Mexicans decided to move to the north. One reason was to escape the revolution that violently divided Mexico for about 10 years. By the end of 1920, about 100,000 Mexicans were living in California. Chavez joined the U.S. Navy for 2 years. He returned to Delano, California, and joined his family working in the fields. During the time that he was working on the fields, he met his wife, Helen Favela Chavez. They were married from 1948 to 1993. In 1962, Cesar Chavez, a man with American and Mexican descent, began an organization called the United Farm Workers in California. Previously, during the 1910s and 1920s, there had been many similar organizing attempts for labor rights, some led by communist unions and some others that erupted spontaneously among workers. Employers were not required to negotiate with their workers. They could fire them if they joined a union. There was even a specific crime, criminal syndicalism, which made labor organizing illegal. Chavez's mission to the creation of the organization was to fight for the basic rights of many workers working in the fields. Some of the rights he was trying to improve were the working conditions of many families. The farm workers were not provided with a bathroom. Around 40 people drank out of a single soda can. Children at young age worked with their parents. This is what later motivated Cesar Chavez to start the National Farm Workers Association. 3 years later after its birth, the National Farm Workers Association joined the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee. Together they became the United Farm Workers in 1972. This non-profit organization helps people get paid what they deserve. Cesar Chavez was taught by his mother at a very young age that violence does not solve one's problem, just make the problem much bigger. A non-violent strategy that the UFW employed was the huelgas, strikes. Cesar Chavez even went on a 25-day hunger strike. One of the reasons that he went on strikes was because he wanted to stop farm owners from using pesticides because it was making the workers very sick. The workers in the strawberry fields would call the berries la fruta del diablo, the fruit of the devil, because harvesting of this requires them to incline and the workers arrange the berries in flat spaces. After hours of this, it became painful for them to be in such position. The beginning of revolutionary ideas came from immigrant committees and the idol of farm workers, and one of the most famous activists of the 20th century was Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez fought for the rights of many innocent people, which all they wanted was to have a better life, and even today he is still making his people's life better because he decided to step up and make a difference. This courageous man helped his people move forward, and even after his death, the humble people who follow his footsteps are making a difference around us when many of us don't notice. Show people what Cesar Chavez was like in real life, not just what was portrayed in the media.
Yo te extrañaré, tenlo por seguro. ¿Cómo pensar que la vida puede terminar en un segundo? La vida es polvo, puede esparcirse en un momento. Nada traíste, nada te llevarás, solo lo que había dentro. Ojalá pudiera devolver el tiempo para verte de nuevo, para darte un abrazo y nunca soltarte. Más comprendo que llegó tu tiempo, que Dios te ha llamado para estar a su lado. Así Él lo quiso, pero yo nunca pensé que doliera tanto.
Ya no llores por mí, yo estoy en un lugar lleno de luz, donde existe paz, donde no hay maldad, donde puedo descansar. No llores por mí, es tan bello aquí. Quiero que seas feliz, que te vaya bien, y cuando te toque partir, espero verte aquí.
Yo te extrañaré, tenlo por seguro.